Hey all, welcome to ShareTreck. This is Raj here, friends. This morning, the index futures are looking bright. We have Dow Jones up 0.31%, S&P 500 futures up 0.92%, Nasdaq futures up a whooping 2.03%, and Russell up 0.21%. So overall, it's looking good, and VIX is still below 20. It still looks benign to me overall. And one of the best news we have today is that ASML CEO sees low-cost AI models like DeepSeek driving more demand and not less for chips. This is going to be positive for our semiconductor sector, because when an industry insider gives some clarification, it helps the investors to move in the right direction. So I think this is a big positive for us. But overall, I think there are dark clouds. We should remember that we still are not out of the tariff threats. If you look at this news item here, which says mortgage demand drops further even as interest rate settles, that makes me feel that probably the next labor reading or job reading that we might get may show more weakness. That is the first point. Second point is that regardless of this, if a tariff is levied on Canada, then lumber imports are going to become expensive, aluminum imports are going to become expensive, and that could further drive up the cost of housing. And the reason why mortgage demand doesn't pick up and the reason why house sales do not pick up is not because people don't want houses. It's just that they are not able to afford. And we are seeing that happen in Canada right now. There are plenty of houses available for sale. There is a whole lot of listings, but the purchase is not happening. And the reason why it's not happening is because people don't have jobs. It's 6.5% unemployment, and people do not have enough salary to qualify for the mortgages. So that's the thing that I'm worrying about as a realtor. That's what I look at when I see this headline. So I'd caution you to be careful not to get overly bullish. Now let's look at the economic calendar. Today, we are going to see the Fed coming up with their interest rate decision, and then there'll be a press conference. This, I think, is going to be a critical event. So the markets could take a turn after 2:30 p.m. After 2 p.m., things could start getting a bit volatile. And I think that's where we have to focus on today. And tomorrow we'll be looking at the jobless claim and the GDP growth, which again is going to be a catalyst. Apart from this, there is a slew of earnings coming up this week. In fact, today we are going to have earnings of Tesla, Meta, and Microsoft after hours. So that could also create a catalyst, positive or negative, for the market. So let me just make a quick count of the whole thing that we are looking at. First is we are looking at the interest rates from Fed, what's going to happen there. The second, the DeepSeek issues are, I think, back burner now. It's already gone and resolved. I don't think there's going to be a spillover of that going forward. However, we're going to have the GDP growth rate coming up. That's going to be the other catalyst apart from the earnings. And also, we have to look at tariffs on Canada. If that happens, then lumber is going to become expensive, aluminum is going to become expensive, copper would become expensive because those are the imports, and they go into the construction industry. So that could create a problem, and that's what we have to keep in mind. Now let's go on to look at the futures. Nasdaq futures are looking pretty good. They are up 0.40% here. And if you look at the chart formation out here, we have a resistance which happens to be at 22,079. And right now in pre-market, we are at 21,664. So we have plenty of room to go up. And I think we'll be able to do that because MACD is still bullish, momentum is still above average and rising. So that's a positive. If you look at S&P 500, we have a bull channel that I have drawn here, and it is still intact. We are looking at a daily calendar, so each of these candles is a one-day candle, and our resistance out here is at 6156.25, and right now we are at 6098.50, up 0.02% in the S&P 500 E-mini futures. So I think that's also looking positive. If you go to the 10-year yields, they are dropping. When 10-year yields drop, the stock market performs very well, and I think that today's Fed rate decision is going to be critical. If we have further rate cuts, then this could drop down further. And if the Fed decides to take a more hawkish stance, I think that's already built into the market pricing. So that's what I'm thinking out here. Guys, if you have a different opinion, please put that in the comment section. But I am thinking that if we ever manage to break down below this line of support for the 10-year yield, it's going to be superlative for the market performance. The stock market can really go up. Now, after that, I would like to look at the indicators. And in the indicators, let's look at actual Dow Jones. It's still looking very strong. And I think we have a resistance which is going to be at around 45,061.65. We still have plenty of room to go up there. Pre-market we are up 0.31%. S&P 500 is looking pretty good out here. We have got a resistance which happens to be at 6092.01. We are already up 0.92% in this morning's pre-market action, and we are at 6067.71 within striking distance of this resistance. Are we going to be able to break through that? That's what we want to see. MACD is looking good. Momentum is also looking pretty good. Russell index is up 0.11% in pre-market action. Our resistance was at 226.63. We are at 227 in pre-market action, up 0.11%. Will this remain? That's the question. I'm just going to convert this resistance at 220.48 into a support because we already gone past that. Actual Nasdaq itself is above the bull flag that we have had in the past, and there is a gap down which needs to be filled up. We are on the way of filling up the gap down, and pre-market we are up 1.59%. We are at 21,463.04, and in order to fill up the gap down we have to reach 21,736. So there is another 300 points to go. And MACD is bullish. Momentum is also picking up. There's a good chance that we might go up. And PCC is looking bullish out here, and VIX is still looking benign to me, and we have support for the VIX at 15.88. We are at 16.53, and we have resistance at 18.16, well below 20. So I'm happy with where VIX is at right now. If we look at QQQ to get a idea of how the market might react today for Nasdaq using QQQ as a proxy, I can see that pre-market it's up 0.44%. So that's what we have out here. And in terms of market breadth, we have dropped a little bit across the board in terms of what happened in the market action yesterday. And today again we are dropping further from a market breadth perspective. So I think that most of our optimism is being driven by the MAC 6 or the MAC 7. And that's the way we have to look at it, which means that the earnings and the forward guidance of the three companies which are going to report today after hours, Tesla, Meta, and Microsoft, may have a big deal to do with the way the market might move going forward. And if you look at Nasdaq, we could probably see a huge drop happen. We have the 200-day exponential moving average, which can give us a support. And we have this other support which happens to be at 19,458.11. So what I'm basically saying is that we are at very elevated levels. There's high expectation riding on earnings, and even if the companies meet the earnings expectations, which are quite high, their forward outlook for the next quarter is also going to determine how the market will behave. So please be careful out there. That's my message. With that said, now let's look at our specific sectors. Now let's look at Google, which is our first stock in this watch list, AI watch list. And Google seems to be pretty decent right now, still within the bull flag, still above the diagonal line of support out here. Pre-market it's up 0.11%. Earnings are coming up on the 4th of February. And I think right now it seems that Google might do pretty decent today as long as it stays above the diagonal line of support out here that we see, which has been coming with us for quite a while. And we have Tesla, which reports earnings this evening after business hours. And right now the market is a little bit suspect about what's likely to happen. So we have minus 0.48% in the pre-market action. Once the earnings come in, we are going to look at whether they met the expectation and what is their outlook for the future. So that's again a critical aspect that's going to determine the market spirits going forward. Apple is down 1.24% in pre-market trade after 2 straight days of gains, and MACD is almost ready to mend. Momentum is just above average, and we have got earnings coming up tomorrow after business hours, so there could be a bit of sideways movements today for Apple. and we'll see what happens after that. Meta is doing very well. It's up 0.45% in pre-market trades, and I've just extended this diagonal line of resistance from a previous channel, so we can go all the way up to 698.62 before having to challenge this diagonal line of support. And if I look at the MACD, it's very bullish. Momentum is also pretty strong. RSI is overbought, but in the past we have gone further up all the way to 77.85. So I think RSI is not the constraint. The constraint is going to be the earnings which are coming out this evening, and I think that's going to make a difference in terms of how Meta will proceed further. The price action will depend on that. Not only the earnings meeting the lofty expectations, but also guidance going forward. And please remember, the guidance from Meta could also have an impact on the semiconductor stocks, because if they reconfirm all the spending that they had thought about before we heard about DeepSeek, that will be a big positive for Nvidia and other semiconductor stocks. Having said that, let's look at Amazon, which is up 0.71% in pre-market trade. And it's within this bull channel, and it could potentially challenge this diagonal line of support. So things could go two ways. One is that if earnings that come out at the end of the day don't turn out to be that well, or if the Fed rate decision causes some movement, then we can bounce back down from there. And if everything goes well, we could potentially break out of this diagonal line of support and go into a superior bull channel like we did before. And whether we'll stay above that or not depends on what happens in the earnings that is due on the 6th of February. And Microsoft is down 0.26%, a very small amount of drop, given that we have earnings coming up after hours today. And Microsoft has already crossed above this diagonal line of resistance from a previous bull channel, and it has gone into it. So that's a very big positive. And if we manage to stay above this diagonal today, that will be a big achievement. And at the end of the day, when we hear the outlook, that could be a big catalyst again for companies like Nvidia, because any reconfirmation of the semiconductor budgets and infrastructure budgets would be positive for Nvidia and semiconductors. At the same time, outlook also is going to be important. A more positive and upbeat outlook would mean that we're going to go up further. Nvidia is down 1.90 in pre-market action. It's above 126.20, which was the support that we had yesterday. And one of the other supports we have yesterday, 127.55, has now become a resistance for us. So things are not looking that great for Nvidia in pre-market session. And most probably by the time we open, we might be below this support of 126.20 and convert that into a resistance, because MACD is bearish and momentum is below average. But momentum is moving in the right direction in my opinion. And as long as we are above the 200-day exponential, I would still give a chance for Nvidia to go up further. But right now, I can't make a call. Then we have AMD, which is up 0.86%. And this dynamic is unique because typically Nvidia is positive and AMD is negative. This time Nvidia is negative and AMD is positive. And it's still below this diagonal line of resistance we have from a previous bear channel. I'm going to mark that red, and our earnings are coming up on 4th of Feb. We'll see what new directions we can have from AMD at that time. F&G is down 0.59%, reflecting overall weakness in the FANG stocks. Broadcom is up 0.41% in pre-market action. That's not much to go about because MACD is bearish and momentum is below average. Oracle is trying to recover. It's up 0.18%. This kind of a candle setup is typically bullish, so I'm expecting a positive outcome for Oracle. However, the lack of momentum, momentum is below average. That's the thing that gives me a pause. Palantir is down minus 0.92%. We have heard talks about defense budgets being reduced, and that could also have an impact on Palantir. So we'll wait and see what happens. But right now, I'm not too much worried because MACD and momentum both are positive, and earnings are due on 3rd of Feb when we'll get more information. Cloudflare is up 10.86% as of yesterday, which is this huge candle that we saw. And this morning, it's still struggling to stay out there. It's likely to open below. It's already down 0.26% in pre-market trade. It's around 8:20 a.m. in the morning. So I don't know what's going to happen when the market opens. Even if we open a little below because profit taking has happened due to the steep raise in the share prices, I think we could probably consolidate today and then move further because RSI is very overbought. So I could either look for consolidation or a drop in Cloudflare. And then we have Adobe, which is up 0.02%. In pre-market trades, we have seen a cup and handle pattern form out here, so I wouldn't rule out further gains for Adobe. And we have SMCI, which is up 0.39%. ARM Technology is up 1.12%. ASML is up 5.01% after a good earnings release. They exceeded on both revenue and EPS, and they have said that DeepSeek in fact strengthens the case for more spending on chips, and that's a very big positive for Nvidia as well. Intel is up 0.40%, and I would like to look at Rigetti. Rigetti is down 2.68%. It's still consolidating out here. I would say that we are still on a bull channel out here for Rigetti. And MACD is mending. Momentum is also above average, so I'm still hopeful for Rigetti. SMR, on the other hand, has been going down steadily, and it's down 0.86% in pre-market trades. So friends, that brings me to an end of today's session. Be very careful out there. It could be a volatile day. Thanks and have a great day. Bye for now.